And so, as I said earlier, Raven's sister had been kidnapped. She came to Esther for help. Esther was able to figure out, with the aid of the phone that the kidnappers left with her, that they were Eastern Europe terrorists. And with the aid of her friend John from the Department of Advanced Terrorist Activities, found that the terrorists were actually located in a warehouse downtown. And there was 12 of them. They were able to use satellite imagery and thermal imagery to see that there were 12 of them. And that this sister, Riley Grace, was being held on the 6th floor. And so Esther asked John for permission to go in and use lethal force to secure Riley's release. And John had the authority and the power to do that, and he did. So Esther devised a plan on what she was going to do. And Day and Raven begged to help in some way. And so the plan was that Raven would ride Esther's motorcycle in front of the warehouse loudly twice as Esther approached the front door and knocked on it, creating a commotion and begging to come in, that she had to use the restroom. And Day was going to drive Esther's car and wait for everybody to come back. And so they all jumped into Esther and Raven jumped into Esther's Mustang, which had just been returned that morning. It had been renovated, beautiful cherry red now, custom wheels, new tires, new windshield. It had been customized, made over with some additional custom parts. And so when they got into it, the engine sounded a lot better than it had before. It had a turbocharger installed on the engine. So it had a strong sound, muscular sound. Raven drove the Mustang, or not Raven, Day drove the Mustang to the warehouse. They stopped a couple blocks away. And then Raven passed the Mustang and went on down and started her riding past the warehouse. And so as she did that, Esther made her way down the side of the building and pulled a bottle of Jack Daniels out from the bag and was behaving as if she'd been drinking. And she walked up to the warehouse door and started pounding on it, saying, I gotta use your restroom, let me in, please. And so she kept pounding real loud, and I believe probably the people inside thought she might attract somebody if they didn't open the door and tell her to go away or whatever. So they opened the door just a crack to tell her to go away, and she slammed her way through and managed to break the necks of 2 people that were just inside the doorway. Each floor had a sentry of 2 at the top of the stairs, so Esther quickly started ascending the stairs, making her way to the 6th floor. Each level she had to meet and defeat 2 sentries, which she did easily. Esther had learned many years ago how to kill with the blow of the fist, and by other means too. So she was breaking necks and climbing the staircases as quickly as she could, because she didn't want the 6th floor to be alerted to her presence. So as she reached the 6th floor, she paused and listened, opened the door, and there's 2 men there, unexpecting her. She quickly approached them, and with these broke their necks and found the hostage, Riley Grace, taped to a chair just maybe 10 feet away. An old wooden chair with arms. And Esther quickly got her breathing under control, which wasn't too bad anyway, and approached Riley Grace, who had tape over her mouth, and she started talking to her and said, "I believe you've been waiting for me. My name is Ester Grace, Ester Saint, and your sister has been very brave. She helped me tonight by distracting the kidnappers so that I could come in here and save you." She said, "It seems like you have a lot of tape on you, so let me slowly remove this." And she started to cut away much of the tape that was on her arms and legs. And after doing that, she said, "Let's slowly move the tape away from your mouth. I don't want to hurt any of those dimples that you might have." And Esther chuckled at herself. And as she slowly removed the tape from Riley Grace's mouth, Riley Grace started to talk and said, "I knew you would come. I anticipated this, and I saw that these men would all die tonight. It's a shame for their mother's sake, but I guess it had to happen. But thank you for coming and saving me. And I had heard that you saved my sister too." And Riley Grace was just a little bit of a chatterbox, and Esther said to her that she was glad that she could be there, and she kept reminding her that her sister had some regrets and had hoped that perhaps they could start all over, and that she'd be a better sister from this point on, because she had real concerns about Riley Grace's safety. And so they walked down the 6 levels. Each level had the 2 dead men somewhere. And as they got to the front door, Esther picked up her jacket that she had dropped at the front entrance once she gained entry, and put it on Riley Grace and said, "It's very cold outside. I want you to have this jacket. One day you'll grow into it and you'll really appreciate having it. I know these things, just like you do." And she smiled at Riley Grace and gave her a wink. And so they walked outside, and Esther explained that her sister was only a couple blocks away waiting for him. And so as they rounded the corner, and the evening was very chilly and you could see your breath, Day and Raven could see Esther and Riley Grace walking up the sidewalk, and they knew that she had been saved and rescued. And so Day ran practically 50 yards up to Riley Grace and picked her up off her feet and gave her a big hug and told her how much she loved her, and she was so sorry that she had been kidnapped, and apologized for how she had treated her and hoped that she would forgive her, and Raven gave Riley Grace a kiss on the cheek, and she had tears coming out of her eyes, and Riley Grace, somewhat embarrassed by all of this, said, I'm fine, Raven, I'm fine. I love you too. And we're going to have to find me a restroom because those people did not let me use a restroom. And everybody chuckled and said, we can do that. So back at the car, Esther said, I'll ride the motorcycle home, and you three go in the car, and we'll meet there and have some cold pizza. And with that, Riley Grace pricked up and says, I just love cold pizza. They didn't feed me either. They wouldn't let me use the restroom or feed me. And so Riley Grace was excited about having some cold pizza. And so they all planned on meeting back at the apartment. Esther arrived first on her motorcycle, and she actually managed to jump in the shower and quickly get dressed into some flannel pajamas, all pink. And she pulled out the cold pizza, and that was just in time for knocking on the door softly that the girls had arrived back. And so Esther went to the door, let them all in, and she suggested to Raven to call her father and suggest that they all stay the night, and that she would take him back home in the morning. So a pizza party was to be had after the excitement of a kidnapping.